So on the landing page for that, you're kind of setting up the book, and then you say, but then people who were paying attention noticed something. And so that's the data, I'm guessing. That's some of it. So what was it that they noticed exactly?
Okay, so the website we're talking about is diaryofcovid.com.
Diaryofcovid.com.
And that is, I am so happy with that. It has like a 2-minute video on there that is so good. I don't know how people have the talents they have in the internet age where they could make such a beautiful book promo video. I love it so much. It inspires me. I think, geez, I better read whatever book this is. Oh wait, that's my book. Like, that's how good this video. But so I started looking around to see if there were any voices other than the panicked ones. Like, was there anybody saying, now wait a minute, hold on a minute, this might be a problem, but not like society level destruction, catastrophic. So I wanted to see, are there any such people? And little by little, I started to find them. And first of all, I started to notice, like, for example, we had Google mobility data, because Google knows when you're driving around because you're using the GPS functionality.
Right.
So it knows when people are moving around and when they're staying home and staying safe. And it turned out that correlated with nothing. And you think, but it should. It seems like it should. Like, if I stay home, that should help. And yet it correlated with nothing. And so which led me to think we are like cavemen trying to understand a semiconductor. Like, this is so far beyond our ability to understand what's going on here. And I just want somebody to say, we really don't understand this as well as we thought. And in fact, what's the guy's name? I'll think of his name later, but one of the Biden COVID advisors, he was at the University of Minnesota, and I'll think of his name, but even he said, we are in the dark ages when it comes to understanding viruses.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who in November 2020 was saying we need to go back and have a much harder lockdown than we had in March. Even he said that. And now he says there is no role for lockdowns whatsoever. Now, could you go from we have to lock absolutely everything down to there's no role for this strategy at all? That goes to show me that the knowledge we have is pitiful compared to what we need to have.
Right.
So anyway, the Google mobility data, then we had very early, like still in the spring, there was a study out of Iceland. It was a contact tracing study that concluded that schools could open and there was going to be no problem. And indeed, they, in Sweden, they kept the schools open. And in fact, teachers, compared to any other profession, actually did better. Right. Health-wise. So there was data coming out very early on suggesting, at the very least, that you could try opening up.
Yeah.
And yet, when they did that, Georgia was referred to as a state that is trying to become the #1 death destination in America.
Yeah.
That is just bizarre.
Yeah. I remember Biden's PSA in the wintertime.
We'll never forget that one.
The winter of death, and everyone's going to die. None of that stuff has been backtracked. If we move forward and we keep talking about the psychosis that seems to be sweeping the country now, even into the Biden regime, was he incoherent, incompetent, dementia? Was he not?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was sort of like this emperor wears no clothes event where everybody knew he was, but now it's open. So we have this psychosis, and it's seemingly driving people apart. So we talk now back to the centralization of the U.S. and maybe some of the states. We're really starting to see this divide between the red and the blue states, and we're starting to see this divide in people's thinking, Biden regime, how COVID was handled, et cetera. I'm just curious then, when you look through the long lens of history, which you're an expert in, you've studied extensively, are there parallels to times in history where this psychosis has really divided these people? We've seen this division, and is there a way to come back together from that?
I think what makes this different, even though it sounds like a cliche, is the impact of social media, because it has been a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I wouldn't want to be without it because I've met just some of the best people in the world through it, and I've been able to gather information that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. So I admit that. But I also feel like even though the internet gave tremendous scope for everyone to express individuality, it also, I think, accelerated tribalism, because everybody instantly knows what everybody else on Earth is thinking simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're wired for that. And I don't think everybody needs to have an opinion on everything under the sun, but now they feel like, well, my tribe says, because I see that all over the world, everybody's wearing this, has this emoji.
Right.
So I guess I better have this emoji. It's like the same mentality that whereby in high school, you would have died 1,000 deaths rather than have to leave the popular kids club.
Right.
Now, I never had that problem, as you can probably imagine, right? Old Woods was in his own little nerdy group, but I know there were people who they would die before having to be the only one who thought a certain way. And I think there is some of that we crave being part of a tribe, and there's something about our nature. And so if the elites tell me I'm supposed to think a certain way, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I don't think people actually go through that thought process. I don't think they say, well, the elites have told me X, therefore. It's just instinctive. It's like when economists say that incentives matter. It's not so much that somebody sits down and says, well, if I have another child out of wedlock, I get this benefit. They don't necessarily sit down and write it out.
Oh, but they do.
But you understand my point, that it's more of it might have a marginal effect of pushing somebody over.
Yeah.
And so I think that has really been so now people feel like they know what all their favorite actors think instantly, all their favorite musicians. They know what academia thinks. They know that what the president's golf handicap is.
Right.
I mean, Jefferson would have been appalled at the idea that we're supposed to know every little detail about the president, or that even Teddy Roosevelt, who really accelerated the visibility of the presidency, he summoned coaches and college presidents to the White House to talk about the dangers of college football. What is the president involved? Can't these leagues figure this out on their own? Right. But this idea of we know everything, we know what everybody's allegiances are. I mean, there's no reason that where you stand on aid to Ukraine should correlate with your opinion on abortion.
Right.
These things have nothing to do with each other, except
the tribe.
The tribe, yeah.
The tribe.
And that's really hard to crack through.